G'day, finally we are here. This is a Stomping Ground IPA hop stomper, and it's one of my favourite IPAs in the country. There's a lot of IPAs around. This is a West Coast IPA. I nearly said plain. It's not plain, but it's a normal, what you'd expect, old school West Coast IPA. Lots of aroma, nice and clear. Crystal clear. It's light in malts. There's enough there to give it some backbone and some balance. And it's just one of my favourite beers. Without going on too much, we'll have a little talk about Stomping Ground. We'll go and have a look where it is on the map. Our Stomping Ground's in Collingwood. Not far from the city at all. You could nearly walk or a short tram ride. It's a nice big open food hall type place. There's a great little cubby house in the back corner for the kids can play. Tons of beers on tap. I don't even remember. Last time I was there was at least 12. There was probably a lot more. Might have been 18 beers on tap. Don't quote me on that, but there's a lot of beers. And this was one of my favourite beers. Now, it must have been, again, about 2 years ago when I asked about the recipe when I was there, and they told me the ingredients, and I thought I'd remember them all. And while I remember the ingredients, of course, I couldn't remember exactly where everything went. So I worked on this recipe probably for the last 12 months. I've brewed at least 6-7 versions of it, and I've got it right where I'm really happy with it. And the day before brew day was the night before. I had already had my grain, everything weighed out. I got an email from someone that had quoted a recipe from the brewer. Now, it was a little bit different to the one that I was quoted, but that happens. And I don't know if they just simplified it, because when I was told they said they had a couple of different grains and things like that, and even if you look on the website it mentions a couple of different grains. Maybe they've simplified it now. Like his version that he'd got only said one grain, like a Pilsner grain or something like that. But besides that, I didn't have to change my recipe at all. I was spot on, and that blew me out that I'd got it so close. But anyway, without too much talk, let's go and brew it. It's a fairly simple recipe, and I think it's a good IPA recipe for a beginner. You can swap the hops nearly to any of your favourite hops that you like in IPAs, but this one is the classic Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe you hear me talk so much about. Let's go and have a look at the recipe. So it's a quick and easy start of 20 litres of water. I add my salts. These salts will help with the pH, also with the flavour of the beer. I'm using tap water. I'm not using filtered water here, just to make it easy for people. Of course, in Brewfather, you can change the water profile to what you want. I'm using a mixture of Pilsner and Maris Otter malts. There's about 3 kilo of Pilsner, 2.5 kilo of Maris Otter. I did play around with these ratios, and I just liked it at close to 50-50. I also added 200 grams of carapils, and I also added 200 grams of acidulated malt. This particular one I was using was Gladfield Sour Grapes. All up, that's 5.9 kilograms, so 20 litres for me is okay for a mash. You can go a little bit bigger if you like, 21, 22 litres. I do a stepped mash for this beer, so I have a strike temp of around 67 degrees, and after I mash in, I'm looking for my first step at about 62 degrees. I'll keep it at that 62 degrees for about half an hour. Then I'll ramp it up to 68. I'll give it like 10-15 minutes ramp time, and then I'll leave it there for half an hour at 68. And then, after that, I step it up to 76 for the mash out for 10 minutes. If you're not comfortable with doing a step mash, that's fine. This recipe will work perfectly well with a single infusion. So I'd probably have a strike water of about 66, and then set it at 62 for a good hour, and then do your mash out. 10 minutes, 76 degrees. And the beer will still be perfectly fine. I do the step mash because I think it just helps to get a little bit more out of the grain sometimes. As usual, after mashing, and we've given it a really good stir, we let it sit for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and turn the pump on and make sure we've got a nice flow. course, you can use rice hulls like I did. It's probably not 100% necessary in this recipe, but it never hurts. This should be a relatively trouble-free brew. As long as your crusher's right, or your shop's crusher's right, wherever you get your grain from, you really shouldn't have any problems. Take it easy at first, as I always say. Maybe start with a pump on a third. Just, watch it for the first 5-10 minutes, making sure you're getting a good flow through. And once you're happy with the flow and it's not backing up, just leave it do its thing. If you're into taking pH readings, you wait your 15 minutes, come back, take a sample. I put it in the freezer for 15 minutes to chill down, and then we test it. And this time we got 5.37, very happy. So it's been at 63 degrees for about 45 minutes. I'm going to leave it at 68 for about half an hour. I've given it a 10-minute ramp time to get up to 68. It'll at least take that. And then leave it there for about half an hour at 68. Have a quick look at the flow. We're going okay. We've backed up a little bit. That's totally normal. Looking good. That is the end of the 68 degree stand. We're running beautifully and clear. So it's time to go into mash out, and I'm just going to leave it as is. I will use both elements to go into mash out. I'm going to put it up to 76 and leave it for 20 minutes. So that's sort of like a 10-minute ramp time, 10 minutes at 76. But, you don't have to start looking at the clock and counting 10 minutes and things like that. Just turn it up and leave it for 20. For mash out, I turn on both elements. There's a reason for this. One, it doesn't matter if I overshoot the temperature, which can happen when you're mashing. If you've got both elements on, it produces a lot of heat down there and you can overshoot it. That is not important on mash out, so I don't have to worry about that. And secondly, that I know I've got quite a nice flow. I don't have to worry about it backing up. It should be fine from here. So I'm not going to run dry at the bottom and there'll be no scorching. Still, keep an eye on it. But we're on the home stretch now. That's our 20 minutes. It's probably been 25 minutes. I was weighing out my hops, but we'll try and have a look. Still running beautifully clear, of course. I haven't disturbed it. If you were having flow issues, you could again give it a tiny stir before mash out. Since you're mashing out for 20 minutes, it'll clear again in that time. It will help your flow if you turn your pump off. Give it a little stir, let it settle down again for a few minutes before you turn the pump back on. Start really slow again and just see how you go. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it's a hindrance, but I mean, if you've already got a blocked mash bed, then it's worth trying anything, isn't it? So it's time to pull this basket. You could do a iodine test if you wanted to. This mash has been going for so long that I'm pretty confident that everything's converted. Shameless plug, the link to the t-shirts are in the description. So simply pull the malt pipe out. Make sure you sit it correctly like I didn't the first time. There we go. And I sparge with about 76 degree water, 76 to 80 degree water I use. You can use a jug or a pot, doesn't really matter. So Brewfather will say, I think it says it's about 15.4 litres. I'll sparge about 15.5. I'll just keep an eye on it and I'll pull this basket off when we get to about the 30 litre mark. Something I see a lot of people mess up with. Sometimes, it can just make the slightest mistake, or the program, something in the program's just set a little bit wrong, and it might tell you to sparge with 18 litres or 12 litres. It doesn't really matter what recipe it is. As long as you sparge to the 30 litre mark, you're going to get your 22, 23 litres out. after a 60-minute boil. If you rely on your programs, sometimes they're a little bit off. These programs are not perfect for single vessel systems. They do a good job, don't get me wrong. They're not always spot on perfect though. See, we're about the 30 litre mark. As it's coming to the boil, I'll recirc to try and strain stuff out. It hasn't got much in there. It's a little bit of chit. Now the reason I don't take a reading now is because one, it's probably not mixed up properly. All the lighter stuff will be at the top and the thicker stuff will be at the bottom. The boil will help mix that up. And two, that you really want to know if you're really going to be accurate. Some people might not worry, I don't worry too much, but you know, about a 1 or 2 IBUs and you think your hops are right and you think everything else is right. You need to know what your wort's at when you actually put your hops in and when you start your boil. Now, depending how cold it is and everything, how much wattage you have and can utilise in your house, it might take half an hour to come to the boil, it might take 20 minutes, it might take an hour. Now you're going to lose evaporation during that hour. You might lose half a litre. You might lose a litre. That's going to affect your numbers and affect your hop utilisation you get. Now, as I said, that's being very, very pedantic. Like, most people don't even think about things like that. But, you know, if you're a commercial brewer, you might. If you were, you know, I know I'm not. But they're just things that change things. They change your bitterness, and depending what beer it is, they can make a huge difference. And a lot of beers, they won't make any difference. But if you're brewing something really light, maybe like a Helly's or something, that couple of IBUs, it might make a difference. In the end, I think you probably have to be Superman to tell the difference. But it's just worth mentioning. This is all the sciences behind it, you know. The higher the gravity, the less hop utilisation you get, or the less bitterness you'll get out of that hop in a certain time. Yeah, something to look into, but it's not something to be too worried about. We're getting up near the boil now. I haven't emptied this or anything, we're just still from the original. Next to nothing, like that. There's bugger all in there. Most people know I do like to add. This one's a bit thicker, this stuff, than my usual. Had to get it from a different place. Foam cap. That'll take care of any boil overs. Still keep an eye on it. Never turn your back on a wort that's coming up to boil. Alright, there we go. So I'll take a sample. I'm throwing in 15 grams of Warrior for about 22 IBUs. The 60-minute mark. I probably just should have thrown them in to the boil since the rest of the hops go in the boil anyway. Probably just should have thrown them in bareback, but anyway. We're aiming for a post-boil of about 57. Sometimes I've been higher, 59, but about 57 is what my recipe says, and so we should be looking for about a 52, something like that. And if you have a look at that, I've hit it spot on today. And about 10 minutes before the end, yeast nutrient. About 10 minutes before the end. Then I take some of the wort out. I add wurflock and my PVPP. Give it a good stir. You could use a commercial Brew Bright or something like that. Even the wurflock by itself will do. I'm just going to take these 60-minute hops out. They've done their business. I probably didn't even have to put these bits in a bag, but it's a little bit less junk in the boil. There's 30 grams of mosaic for the last 5 minutes. Now the mosaic is just to give us some bitterness, some extra bitterness. In the actual brewery, they'd probably put it all in the whirlpool, but you get a little bit less bitterness out of the whirlpool at home. It doesn't matter on your system really, than most of the commercial systems do. Let's time up, turn off the elements. 60 grams of the hops, Citra and Simcoe. That's 30 grams each of the Citra and the Simcoe in at the end. Then we whirlpool for 10 minutes. If you've got a whirlpool arm, you can use a whirlpool arm. I just use the pump sometimes like this. It's up to you. I didn't have a whirlpool arm at this stage. I've got one now. I'd probably use it now, even a homemade one. So what you'll see in the recipe is a 10-minute whirlpool or 10-minute hop stand. What I usually do with a brew like this, because you want it nice and clear at the end, I'll whirlpool for probably 5 minutes of the 10 minutes, and the last 5 minutes of the stand or the whirlpool, I turn the whirlpool arm off, and that just gives a chance for the wurflock and everything to work a little bit better in these shorter stands, these 10-minute stands. And they're hot stands, so you don't want to leave them too long because you'll just keep getting a bitterness out of them. That's been going for 5 minutes. I'm just going to pull it out of the wort, turn the pump off. That's going to get covered with the lid in a second. Might be off camera. So I'm going to go straight from there to there. For those that don't know, the hot wort goes into this side. That means the wastewater comes out of here. It's easy to get confused. You think counterflow, you think cold water, hot wort, but I can't see what you're looking at. Yeah, cold water goes in here, cold wort, well, hot water but wastewater. The pipe I'm using on the other side of the chiller is the long pipe that I've used to transfer my hot water all day. So one, it's clean, and two, it's had 80-degree hot water go through it for most of the day, so it's also nicely sanitised. It'll probably fall out as I'm mucking around. Excuse my fat gut. And don't forget your restrictor, just in case you're coming out too hot and you don't want to melt. If you're using this sort of fermenter, you don't want to melt it. So I can back it right off at the start. So the cold water is running through here now. You can tighten this up just a bit. Start the pump on the Brew. Brewzilla. My groundwater is really cold. I haven't even got a temperature gauge on the end of this yet, but I'm not going to need one. I raved on a bit too much here, and it was the beginning of winter. My groundwater was super cold. I didn't have to worry. I ended up going full bore through the plate chiller. It was done in less than 7 minutes again. It was about 6.5 minutes it took to chill the whole batch down and get it into the fermenter. That'll do. I'll just turn that off. I can't reach the pump, so I'm going to have to turn it off here. I didn't have the camera on. I sprinkled in 2 packs of Nottingham. You could probably get away with 1 pack. It says 0.5 gram to 1 gram per litre. That's 22 litres, 11 grams. This is 1060 around-ish, maybe a little bit under. But of course I'm doing a video and I want this to work properly. But I still think 1 pack would be enough, but I've just got to have, use a bit of insurance here. So I use 2 packs. Bit of a hop cone there. See, it does well with just the pump. And we can see the sample's cleared out. Sample's cleared out nice and clear too. It's only been about, I don't know, 10 minutes. I just went and flushed the chiller out. That is 50 grams of Citra and the equivalent of 50 grams of Mosaic and 50 grams of Cascade. It looks a little small because those top ones, the bigger pellets there, are cryo hops. So I have, because the cryo hops are nearly twice the strength. So my Citra is a regular pellet. There's 50 grams of that, and I have 25 grams of Cascade cryo and 25 grams of Mosaic cryo, just for a change. It was available and I thought I'd use it instead, just to give it a go. But just normal, if you were going normal, 50 grams Citra, 50 grams Mosaic, 50 grams Cascade. I'm going for the top, just to show you don't need a fancy fermenter like this. I could take the yeast off the bottom, I could purge it, but we haven't quite finished fermenting yet. I'm just going to go through the top like you would in any sort of fermenter. A little hint for getting these lids off. I'm going to try not to have to use my gas bottle. There's a lot of pressure in there. I'll let most of it out, but not all of it. And if I've left enough, there might be enough just to pop that lid off. Maybe. I left enough in there? Maybe I haven't. Oh yes, I have. There you go. You should be able to turn that till you start hearing a hiss. There we go. And let out the pressure, then I can undo it. I haven't had to use any gas to get that lid off. I can just pop those in quickly like that. And push the lid down. It will pop up. It will pop up from the gas if you're not quick enough. And there we go. As I said before, I don't purge. I think it's better off. All the CO2 from the mess we just made is coming up. It will push out the gas tube, or the gas side. Once it builds up again. If I force CO2 in there, that oxygen that's in there is all just going to get stirred up. It's going to clear that krausen out of the way, and that oxygen's going to get stirred up in the wort. So if you do want to flush or purge, do it gently. Otherwise, you're just forcing the oxygen around in there to be mixed up, and you're clearing that krausen off the top of the wort, which is protecting it at the moment. You can see the pressure's up already. I might even let some out so I can start purging that oxygen. I don't need a big pressure. Going nuts from those hops being added. It's Friday afternoon now. You can see that the pressure's dropped a bit from my cold crushing, but as long as I start about over 12, it's usually alright. Well, you know, there's still 5 psi on there now. But I just thought I'd take this footage because you can really see the cold crush working there. You can see the yeast it's pretty defined. It's clearing right at the top there. Yeast is catching on the side a bit, but you can see, I know it's about the top 3 inches is cleared. G'day, excuse my reading glasses, and you have to excuse my glasses, but no mic and stuff here. This one's mine, the one with the more head, and this is the Stomping Ground. They are like, that's identical. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that before, because my keg's about to run out, and I haven't done many side by sides with the version 1 or version 2, not on camera. So I thought this is version 3 and the keg's just about to run out. So I'll just show you. The only difference is, yeah, the canned one, it's a bit hard to see, hasn't got much head on top, where mine has got that little bit more head. Back at the tasting bench again. Now, I'm not doing a side-by-side at the moment. Reason is, I've brewed this beer many times, and it is, I don't know if that's going to focus, it is, you know, the colour of many, many light IPAs or ales. So I'm not trying to match colours, but I can show you photos and excerpts where I've done side-by-sides. Every batch I've done side-by-sides, and this is the sixth batch, I think it is. Oh. Yeah. There's no speaking. If you haven't dry hopped a West Coast IPA with citrus, a Simcoe, Cascade, Mosaic, I'm nearly speechless, and I'm not just bugging this on. There's a reason I've brewed this beer many times. There's a reason in a lot of my beers you'll see Citra and Mosaic and Simcoe. It just works. It's just got a bit of condensation from the, because it's cold. But once you wipe that off, you know, it's crystal clear. I'm just looking at the monitor there, so make sure it's on the camera. But this has been in the keg a few weeks now. And it's still, I mean, it was enclosed transfer. I think that makes a difference. Your aromas and things really last longer. You don't need to, the ferment under pressure thing isn't that important. It just really helps with that oxygen-free transfer. Oh. Mosaic, Citra, and you get it all. You'll get sick of me using these hops if you're not already, because I've been using them for years. But I hear a lot of people whinging they don't have a straight up West Coast IPA lately. You know, everything's hazy or NIPA. I've got an NIPA in the fridge with these same hops. It was supposed to be Sabro, but the Sabro didn't turn up, so it ended up being Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe again. It's just good. And even those people, it's not too bitter. Because it gets it all from the whirlpool or steep, you don't even have to do a whirlpool, just a steep, if you like. There's enough bitterness there, but those people that like a pale ale but don't like an IPA because it's too much bitterness, you'll enjoy this. You know, it's reminiscent of a hop hog. The early hop hog, not the hop hog now. It just has, there's a real, like I nearly want to say pine, but not pine where you know, sometimes pine gets too much. It's a citrus, it's a pine. It's just good. I don't really know what much else to say about this beer, except if you want a West Coast IPA, and the hops matter, like, and the age of the beer. I like it fresh. I like it a little bit aged. But of course it changes. Use the freshest hops you can. If I haven't mentioned it already in the video, when you're making IPAs, and especially for aroma, and late entries, use the freshest hops you can. There's no point, if your citrus you've got, Citra you've got is 3 years old, or maybe not Citra. No, sub it for something else. Fresh. And your beers will be sensational in these style. And I think that's the thing, you know. And it's why breweries do it. Breweries change their recipes all the time. Because it's about the freshness. There's no point using old hops when you want a fresh taste and a fresh aroma. Like 1 year's okay, as long as it's been stored. Anyway, this video is not about that. This video is about this beer. I love it. It's very close. As I said, I don't have to do a side-by-side. I can show you pictures. It's just a good, solid West Coast IPA. If you like it a little bit more bitter, chuck a little bit more hop in the boil. I wouldn't go any less. You don't know how hard it has been to leave a couple of beers for this beer review. It's taken me for a while to get the time and space to do it. And just to let it clear a little bit, you know. Because I don't add clearing agents. Well, not after the boil anyway. Sometimes I feel for videos that I should, you know, because you're just waiting, you want to get the video out. You want to do a grain to glass. But you just want to wait a week or two so it clears naturally. My day just got a whole lot better. I'm just going to tell you, it's a horrible windy day here in our battery hen style living arrangements at the moment in Melbourne. But this beer's made it a whole lot better. Cheers. Okay, so that's it. Nice, simple recipe, but you won't regret it if you brew it. It's a really nice beer. Again, nice, fresh hops. If you can't get fresh hops of the ones in the recipe, get something similar that's fresher. Fresh, fresh, fresh. And the same if you go to buy the beer, make sure it's fresh. Try and buy it direct from the brewery. I did that because there's a date on the bottom. Try and buy it direct from the brewery. If not, it is in Dan's and BWS, at least down in Victoria. But check the dates. Check the dates. You want it fresh because it's an IPA and you don't drink stale IPAs. If you like Feral Hop Hog, if you like Punk IPA, it's that sort of, like the original Punk IPA, the original Feral Hop Hog. If you like that sort of straight up West Coast IPA, this is the beer for you. So when you can, I highly recommend, I'm not just saying this, I highly recommend you go to Stomping Ground. It's one of my stomping grounds when I can get there. I really enjoy it. They'll have sours, they'll have lagers. I think I was there at Oktoberfest. Yeah, well, my birthday's in October. Last year we went there for my birthday. They had a range of Oktoberfest beers on. They have sours, all sorts of stouts, and they're just a really good brewery. Get there, try it, brew this beer. Thanks very much. I'll see you in the next one. Like, subscribe, share. Here's to you. Cheers.